Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Today we look at a top level controller of a £27 million drug gang and who was caught as he tried to flee with his girlfriend in a BMW to Spain. Jordan Talbot was exposed as EncroChat boss LittleNev as a leader of a plot involving at least 500 kilograms of Class A drugs. The 29-year-old planned to move abroad as soon as his license period for a past sentence for trafficking cocaine expired. Ahead of his big trip, Mr. Talbot went on a 2-week spending spree, buying himself more than £40,000 of Rolex watches. But detectives swooped on the cocaine, heroin and cannabis dealer just as he was about to escape across the channel. Judge Neil Flewitt, QC, said it was the biggest EncroChat drug case so far and an extremely grave offence as he jailed Mr. Talbot for 21 years and 9 months. Mr. Talbot of Alson Road, Formby, was locked up alongside conspirators James Ward, 32, of no fixed address, but from Kirkby, and Jamie Carlton, 40, of Church Road, Waterloo. The judge said, "You have all contributed to the degradation and human misery that drugs cause to those who take them, their families and the wider community, which is affected by the crimes committed by those who are addicted to them. It's an inevitable consequence of your convictions that your families will also suffer from your criminality." Liverpool Crown Court heard that 3 men were rumbled when the encrypted phone network was cracked. Mr. Ward went by the name Stable Toast, Mr. Carlton used the handle Stale Sloth, and another Merseyside man, who is still at large, was called Damp Hedge. Andrew Thomas QC, prosecuting, said messages showed 10 weeks of multi-kilo trading between April 1st and June 13th, 2020. However, notes captured from Mr. Talbot and Damp Hedge's EncroChat devices showed the full scale of the scheme, dating back to January 2019. He said the recovered notes indicated this was part of a multi-million-pound operation involving importation of drugs and the substantial supply of kilogram quantities to up to 30 regular customers. It was reported how Mr. Talbot was part of a cocaine gang whose hopes of netting £1 million a month were dashed while they enjoyed a celebrity breakfast at a garden centre in January 2014. Prosecutors said he was radically under-sentenced when he received 6.5 years for the Class A plot in May 2014 because evidence later showed he was later the leader of the UK arm of the audacious enterprise. Mr. Thomas said Mr. Talbot was released from prison in April 2017 and became a top-level controller of a group dealing multi-kilo quantities almost daily. He said Mr. Talbot employed Moneyman, Damp Hedge, to assist with finances and invested in property development to disguise his criminal property. The prosecutor said messages showed Mr. Talbot and Damp Hedge were 2 of 6 equal partners in the wider conspiracy. Damp Hedge's malicious records show sales of £27.7 million over a 15-month period, which Judge Flewitt said was the turnover. Mr. Thomas said the wider plot involved possibly up to 1,000 kilograms of Class A drugs over 18 months. Damp Hedge recorded a near £3.3 million gross profit before deductions of around £1.5 million for wages and £1 million for losses including drug seizures, meaning the 6 conspirators made a net profit of £740,000, equating to around £123,000 each. Mr. Thomas said this was not quite as much as expected, adding, "We have learned a lot from Operation Venetic." Mr. Talbot, who also had a flat in Bootle, discussed paying couriers £300 per kilo for trips. Messages showed him arranging deliveries to Liverpool, Wirral, Skelmersdale, St Helens, Manchester and Milton Keynes. Mr. Thomas said Mr. Ward, then living in Bootle with his girlfriend, was a top-level courier who moved drugs and cash for Mr. Talbot and made deliveries of up to 24 kilograms of Class A drugs in one go. Mr. Ward, who had no previous convictions, had a specially adapted Ford Connect fan, deliberately chosen because it was inconspicuous, with a secret hide operated with a concealed locking mechanism, and also a Ford C-Max and a Ford Mondeo. He recruited lower-level courier Mr. Carlton, then of Aintree Lane, Aintree, whose records includes 8 months in prison for inflicting grievous bodily harm. Mr. Carlton was also given a similarly adapted C-Max with a hidden compartment. Mr. Talbot was arrested in Falkenstone, Kent on July 20th, 2020 when attempting to leave the UK with his girlfriend in a BMW bought for nearly £20,000. The drug boss, who also had an AMG Mercedes registered in his girlfriend's name, was carrying £2,000 and €1,000, and £6,000 was recovered from his flat. He had bought 3 Rolex watches at jewellery shops in Liverpool city centre, 2 in someone else's name, paying £43,450 in total. Mr. Ward was arrested on July 21st when the Connect van was seized and a cash counting machine found inside in his home bearing his fingerprints with £2,140 nearby. Mr. Carlton handed himself in on September 16th. Mr. Talbot, Mr. Carlton and Mr. Ward all admitted conspiring to supply Class A drugs and possessing criminal property. Mr. Talbot and Mr. Ward also admitted conspiring to supply Class B drugs. Mr. Thomas said Mr. Talbot was involved with at least 500 kilograms of Class A drugs and less than 100 kilograms of cannabis. Judge Flewitt said, "I think that's a large quantity as we've seen in any of the EncroChat cases in the current batch." James Hayworth, defending Mr. Talbot, said when released from jail, he obtained legitimate employment as a tyre fitter and indeed set up his own business. However, he said, ultimately there was a debt arising from drugs seized within that original case, which attached to him, and he readily returned to a significant level of involvement with this particular drugs conspiracy. Mr. Ward was also involved in transporting about 48 kilograms of Class A drugs from March 31st, 2020, for about 2.5 months until the gang ditched their EncroChat phones. Damien Nolan, defending Mr. Ward, said he had very young children with his girlfriend, who was sat crying in the public gallery. He said the mum was ill and her position is not going to improve, so the burden of caring for her children without him would only increase. Mr. Nolan said, "That's a fact I know bears heavily on Mr. Ward himself." He said references spoke of his positive good character and he was remorseful for acting out of desperation. Mr. Nolan said, "Sadly, that decision is now going to haunt him for very many years." Judge Flewitt said describing Mr. Ward as just a courier understated his involvement, as he had trust and confidence of Mr. Talbot, was involved in discussions about distribution and was well paid. He jailed him for 15 years and 9 months. Mr. Carlton was involved in transporting 20 kilograms of Class A drugs from May 1st, 2020 for 5 or 6 weeks and was the most junior of the 3. Michael Bagley, defending Mr. Carlton, said his family were surprised by the actions of the manual worker who lost his job at the start of lockdown. He said his client, who had past convictions for possessing cocaine, was involved in the plot for only a matter of weeks. Judge Flewitt said Mr. Carlton still played a significant role as he jailed him for 12 years. So what are your thoughts about this Liverpool-based drugs conspiracy that involved big amounts of Class A and Class B drugs through the use of EncroChat messages? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.